as always, another one. We got another one for you, ladies and gentlemen. We got another press play for you. This one comes to us for a suggestion from who other than Arain.
Listen. This is what I do. This is what I do best. If you need a suggestion about anything, car insurance, a realtor.
No. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress this enough. Do not trust anything Arain says about anything related to car insurance.
Like Angie's List. Come to me if you want a recommendation.
No, don't. Okay. All right. We're just going to move forward here. It's not.
But I mean, hopefully they'll send us a check.
You're going to get us into it. They're not going to send us a check. Okay. So we decided to review a film called Lingua Franca. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably not. I'm probably butchering it. Oh well. What are you going to do?
That's how I said it in my head.
But let me give you guys the quick synopsis for this film. This is about Olivia, an undocumented Filipino trans woman who works as a caregiver to Olga, an elderly Russian woman in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. When Olivia runs out of options to attain legal status in the U.S., she becomes romantically involved with Alex, Olga's adult grandson, in the pursuit of a marriage-based green card. Let's just jump into the plot of the film. So, of course, this is directed by Isabel Sandoval, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, and written by her as well as she stars in the film as the main character, Olivia. So, yeah, let's just jump into the plot. What did you think of the plot for this film?
So, I really like the plot based off of how relevant the story is to like where we are today, right? Okay. It's easy to identify with a plot that is something that you see on the news every day, that you hear about every day. That's like a real situation that might impact people that you know. That's like really affecting people's lives. I mean, ICE is a real organization who's really rounding up people, destroying families, doing deportations. So like reading the synopsis of this film and watching it, like I feel like it's easy to get invested in this story because you understand the gravity of what it really means or what it means in real life. And obviously this follows the story of Olivia, who's a Filipino trans woman, which adds a different dynamic to the whole thing. And her, not just her navigating being an immigrant in this country, being a trans woman, being an immigrant. I said that twice, but like also navigating like, just everyday life, like having a job, having to go to work and trying to have like relationships and fall in love with somebody. Maybe it is for the sake of getting a green card. Maybe you do find love along the way. But I thought that this story was, I'm not going to say authentic, but I will say, or I'm not going to say original, right? But I will say it's authentic to her. And this is like Isabel Sandoval's real life story. That is really what drew me to this film. It's like this film was written, directed, produced, and starred by her. And it's also very, very closely mirrors her like real life.
Yeah, I didn't see exactly how much of this was fictionalized and how much of it is actually drawn from her life. But what I can talk about is the actual story itself. So it's actually one of the best movies that I think I've ever watched, as far as like everything in it feels genuine. It does, at no point in this film that I ever feel like, oh, like this is like a contrived story that, that they're trying to cook up to just maximize how we feel about it. They're trying to control us as the audience as far as, how they want us to feel. But what she does with this story is create something that's genuine and authentic, and it feels like that on screen. And so I can even point to like specific, like, things that happen in the movie where, so you have Olga and Alex, right? So Olga is the grandmother and Alex is the grandson. And so Alex is like this cut up who, like, he's kind of like the family screw up. We've all got him. If you're wondering, oh, who's that in my family? You're probably it.
Yeah, you're either it or it's like your direct sibling.
Yeah.
You don't want to acknowledge.
So Alex is the screw up, and so he's trying to like get his life together. As we enter the story, he's just coming back from, I think he's oh god, I want to say he was away at like maybe like treatment or something like that, or no, I'm sorry, he got I guess he was in jail or something like that because he ran a car into like a bodega or some shit like that. And so I don't know if he's coming from jail or rehab or something like that. So when he comes back, you know, the family's kind of treating him kind of like a screw up that they think he is, right? And Olga is basically trying to, like, he's assigned basically to help care for Olga, which is his grandmother, who basically has like dementia at this point. And so as he's doing that, one of the like little tiny scenes that I just found like so dope was like how he goes to set the table for her, and he makes the dinner for her, and he sets the dinner down, and he sits down, and she's like, "Excuse me," and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Aren't you, you know?" And she didn't even say it, but she's like, "Aren't you going to get my chair for me?" And he's like, "Oh shit, yeah." And then he like, you know, and she's trying to teach him, and that's like one of like the little subtle moments that's just like, they don't throw it in your face that she's trying to basically like coach him up on like, "Hey, all right, toughen up," like, or straighten up, young man, you know. But it's clearly implied, and they do that so many times in the movie, of just these little moments that are just, you know, really sort of just, you know, specific, but not in your face, you know. And I found that Olivia's journey in terms of being an immigrant trans woman who's trying to get this green card, it was so well done, as far as just depicting what that life is like, of just constantly having to look over your shoulder for ICE. At so many points in the movie, you see like reminders, like when she's walking down the street, there's always this eerie feeling that she's going to get snatched. You don't know if it's Michael Myers that's going to pop up and get her, or, you know, there's always just this like lurching sort of like feeling, oh my gosh, like something's going to happen to her. And that feeling is, for her, is ICE, you know. For as the viewer, you think, oh, somebody might come and, you know, mug her or beat her up or do something, but really she's just worried about ICE constantly, you know, coming to snatch her up. And they really do a great job in depicting that. And one of the things I can definitely like relate to is like, she has that initial phone call with her mother, where her mother is asking her, "Hey, you know, what's going on? Hey, are you going to send the money? Hey, are you going to do this?" And it's just such a relatable conversation, you know, that we've all had, I think, with her. It's just like, you're on a conversation with your mom, and you're just like, all right, we gotta wrap this conversation up. Like, this is it's clearly gone on too long. I love you, you know, but I gotta go. You know, it's such a relatable conversation, just to even start off the movie. And again, what I can say about the plot is, when we get towards the end of the movie, where, you know, her and Alex, Olivia and Alex, have this sort of budding sort of romance, and you think, oh man, this is going to like work out. It's going to happen. You know, he is a single person, so he can marry her and give her the green card status she's looking for, which would provide at least some sort of safety for her from having to worry about this ever-present sort of like ICE situation going on. But he finds out that she's a trans woman by stealing her green card, right?
Well, it was his friend.
That's fair enough.
Yeah,
and that's a fair point.
For me, it was kind of that whole like scene and how that happened was kind of weird, but, you know, continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyways,
you can't trust your own boy to chill the fuck out when you're staying at my grandma's house,
just looking through the drawers,
to not rob my girlfriend.
Yeah, because you have to figure. Didn't he actually rob her? Didn't he take her purse?
Remember, at first he went through her purse and he stole money out of her purse, and then he went
fucking
into
scumbag, my dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So moving past that, but so they have this romance that's going on, and so at that point she hadn't told him, you know, of her past or anything. All he knows is that she's needing a green card. So he finds out, and he has her prior green passport rather, which she actually needs in order to eventually get this green card. And so she's looking for this passport, which, you know, is clearly gone. And then he tells her, oh, you know, hey, this was because ICE, you know, came in, and I saw a dude with the ski mask,
guy with a mask sneaking out of your room, or something like that. Yeah,
yada yada. So she's believing, and she's living in fear that, oh my God, you know, here's this person, you know, the ICE is showing up. Finally, it's happening. You know, oh my God, what's going on? Turns out that he just has her passport, and he just doesn't know how to tell her, / he doesn't know how he feels about the whole situation. He's still trying to work that out. And And then he offers her up after kind of like a drunken night. He offers her up. He's like, hey, I want to make this right because I know it was wrong that I just took your passport and that I found out this thing about you and I didn't tell you that I knew. I want to offer you this, I want to make this right. Let me marry you. And she ends up saying no. And it was one of the most beautiful fucking moments because it's the most realistic moment I think I've seen in a film in quite some time of it's such a human thing. Here he has basically all the answers. Here's this person who she cares about clearly. And she's gotten really close to, the thing that she's basically been daydreaming about since like the beginning of the film, and who can solve her problem that she has. And she tells him essentially no, because he hurt her and he made it so that she couldn't trust him.
Yeah.
It's the most human fucking thing to think of, even if you're in that danger, even if it's like, oh my God, this could solve all my problems, yada, yada. But still, the person I care about most, I can't trust.
Yeah. Why that was so impactful is that transcends everything else.
Yeah.
It transcends her identity. It transcends her,
status,
their sexuality, her status. At the end of the day, that comes down to like the pillars that build like a real relationship, right? Whether it's man and woman, woman and woman, man and man, whether one person's transgender or not. At the end of the day, if you cannot trust the person that you're in the relationship with, that you're involved with, even if it's your goal is to get a green card, to get citizenship, at the end of the day, if you can't trust that person, taking the step of like involving yourself in a marriage with that person seems like a more daunting task, seems like a heavier burden than to still remain undocumented and Alex, go through the risk of having ICE find you. So, but and to your point, like that was just like a very like realistic human thing, which is why this film is so relatable.
Yeah.
If you're a person who's like mature enough to detach yourself from like her identity and her status,
I don't even think you like, and that's obviously like a big, I think, point in, in watching a film like this is like, if you go into it thinking like, oh, like I'm about to watch something with somebody transgendered. Oh my gosh. Like, ooh, I gotta watch myself. Just like, come on, just fucking like watch a movie, be a fucking adult, just watch a movie. And just that's what movies are about, man. That's why
there are people who can't though. Like if we're having a real conversation,
100%.
Like, so Frank Ocean, right?
Sure.
Incredible musician. There are people who like, and I know people who feel like, oh, I can't listen to Frank Ocean's music because like, he's singing to a guy at the end of the day and he's like bisexual or he's gay or whatever. And it's like you really can't detach yourself like from their sexuality for a few minutes to listen to a 4-minute song. Like you really can't detach yourself from that. Like with this film, if you can't watch this film and detach yourself from like really caring about Isabel Sandoval's identity or sexuality or status and just enjoy like a really good body of work, that's where you have to question yourself, not necessarily the people who you're watching on film.
Yeah. And I think that's where my thoughts goes is that like, no matter how you might feel, like you're like watching movies is about stepping into somebody else's shoes, and how you could watch this movie and not feel empathy for Olivia's character of having this ever present sort of issue of ICE sort of hanging over her head, and then dealing with the issue of who she is as a woman and her journey to that point, and come away with and even her relationship with Alex of not empathizing with that relationship. Like I don't know you got some other issues going on if you can't look at that and empathize with it and be like and find something relatable in that, then I don't know what the fuck to tell you, but this is a dope ass fucking movie. I love the fucking plot, and how it ended was so beautiful and brutal at the same time when you think of the implications that she decides to basically continue on this unknown journey, even this whole idea of ISIS following her the entire time, and she decides I could take the easy way out and marry Alex, but fuck it, like, you know, and clearly he's a little flaky, just to say the very least.
Yeah. I don't think you would have married this guy either way.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have worked out.
Ice was in the hotel lobby. I still don't think she'd want to marry this guy.
Yeah. And so, a beautiful film. Love the plot. Let's move on to the characters. Let's talk about who our runners up are, who our MVPs are. Let's roll.
So with this film in particular, I feel like it's difficult to have like runner ups and, people like honorable mentions or anything like that, just because very small cast. You didn't really see much of the other supporting actors and actresses in this film.
And I should mention that the casting by credit on this is Bess Pfeiffer, I believe her name is.
Bess Pfeiffer?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my runner-up, only because, I don't know, she was kind of like charming and just like interesting. My runner-up for this film is going to be Olga. I just love when, like, you love child actors and actresses. Why? Because like you just see, it's incredible to see someone find their passion and what they're good at like such a young age and pursue it. Like when you see these like 6, 7, 10-year-old kids, you know, acting, right? Like we talked about Millie Bobby Brown earlier. She's only like 16, 17, right? Started acting at a very young age, managed to put together an incredible body of work and be able to hold her own against more seasoned actors and actresses. So the actress who plays Olga, which is Lynn Cohen, when was she born? 1933. She was born.
Yeah.
So that makes her what, 70, about 70, 68, 70?
You're better at math
I don't know, because I went to public school.
Yeah, 86,
we talked about this earlier. So if I even older.
And by the way, she sad news, she actually did pass away in February of this year.
Fuck.
Yeah, but continue.
I didn't know that. Jesus. Yeah. Well, you know, rest in power, Lynn Cohen.
Yeah.
Damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Damn, fucking 2020.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so we're gonna try and press on, but I did not know that. So, but anyway, she starred in this film in her 80s, right? And you just have to admire that. And not only was she like a prominent feature in this film, like during the scenes in which she was present in this movie, like she carried her weight as an actress. She embodied this character, right? One of the opening scenes that I loved in this film was like the long continuous shot of her peeling the orange, right? Yeah. How real and authentic that felt. Peeling the orange, the phone rings, she goes to take the phone call, and she's just like kind of like navigating, moving in this space, and it just felt very real. It felt very authentic. She was like in character. Yeah, I love that scene. To me, she was my runner-up. Yeah. But obviously, my winner here for this film goes to Isabel Sandoval, who played Olivia. Again, she wrote this film. She directed this film. She was, I believe, a producer on this film. She is the star of the film. She managed to do all of those things while still being present when on camera, right? It's very difficult. I would imagine it's very difficult to direct and be present on camera and to not be worried about other things, right? To be really present in your character. She was able to do that. She sold her character. She sold the stress of the environment and the situation that she was in as a human being living as an undocumented immigrant in this country, having to worry about ICE, also navigating the relationship that she's involved in, navigating her work environment. She sold all of that to where at a certain point, as you start the movie, you don't question it. Yeah. So to me, her performance in this film was A-list.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to have to, you know, play copycat here, because I think my list is going to be just as, you know, yours was, but I will give honorable mentions. So for, I will give an honorable mention to Ermin Farin, who played Alex. I thought he did a fantastic job kind of playing like the, you know, the family screw up / you know, dude who's going to get like reformed. And what was beautiful about the end part was it seemed like it was going in the direction of like, oh my God, he's getting his act together. He's like, he's pulling together. He's made a decision in his life. He's like, playing a Michael Jackson song in the background, like, look, man, in the mirror. Like he was like, yeah, I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and it doesn't end the way that you think it's going to end, as far as him pulling it together and, them, riding off in the sunset together. It ended in a very sort of like realistic, heart wrenching kind of way. And then I would also have to give a shout out to, oh man, and I'm going to try to find her, but I can't see her at the moment, but Olivia's best friend. And I think it's played by Ivory Aquino. I believe her name was Trixie.
Yep.
Yeah, in the film. I thought she did a fantastic job as well. She played a great role as like the best friend of like, kind of like poking holes in Olivia's like, when Olivia was kind of saying something that didn't really make too much sense, she was like
asking the questions that
yeah,
your friend
like
would ask.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it was like a very relatable, like, yeah, this is kind of like exactly what a best friend would do, and this is how a best friend would kind of like say it. But obviously, just like you said, Lynn Cohen gets my runner up because she was fantastic as Olga. Just everything that you would want, I guess, in a Russian grandmother. She was cursing at Alex. And she was stubborn, but also she was just so sweet. And between that first initial meeting between her and Alex, it was so great to sort of watch that because she was so genuinely excited, like that you felt like this was her grandson, and she was so excited to see him, and he was excited to see her. But then you see kind of like the underbelly of their relationship, thereafter. And I actually try to remember where I know her from. And what I actually know her from was, I don't know if you ever watched the show Masters of None with Aziz Ansari. His show on Netflix. So she plays in the first season. She plays, and I forget his girlfriend's name in the first season of Masters of None, but she plays her grandmother.
Okay, yeah.
Where essentially Aziz like kidnaps her basically, for like a day or night or whatever.
I remember that episode. Yeah. Didn't he go to have like a ganoush or baba ganoush or something like that with her grandma?
Yeah, at like the restaurant,
and
then she just like leaves the restaurant, and then they find her like singing somewhere. So she. I was trying to remember where I know her from. I knew her from somewhere. And so I get it, obviously she gets my runner up, and also how she depicted playing somebody who basically has dementia. She was going through dementia, and that's one of the first scenes and last scenes that we actually see in the movie is her going through this fit of dementia, which I thought was a curious note because I didn't really understand exactly why we began and ended with her. I haven't thought about exactly what the meaning of that is, but I thought it was dope nonetheless. But yeah, she knocked it out of the fucking park. She played every type of, like, she had the spectrum of character. This frail old woman that you couldn't touch, then this angry like kind of gust of wind that just and so she killed it all. And I think her role was so much appreciated in this film. Sad to see that she passed away, but but yeah, she left behind some really, really great work. And then of course, yeah, just like you, my MVP has to be Isabelle Sandoval, who played Olivia, and then to know that she was the writer, director, producer for the film, simply incredible. You and then just like you were saying, how she depicted the character of Olivia was so genuine and was so honest and was so brutal. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much more to say than that. She knocked it out of the park. As far as as far as depicting the story and conveying it. And yeah, I just thought it was, I'm genuinely, I love this movie. I thought it was fantastic. And it's mostly due to her portrayal of the character of Olivia. Let's move on here to the cinematography. What do we think of the cinematography of the film? And the cinematographer for the film is Isaac Banks, by the way.
So for me, the cinematography, like there were certain moments that really, really stood out. The rest of it for me just felt appropriate. There was nothing dynamic that needed to be done here. I don't need any like quick cuts. I don't need any like ridiculous dynamic camera angles. I just need great shots, like authentic shots that make me feel like I'm present in the scene. And I need shots that like feel, it's kind of like have like texture to it, right? When I say texture, I mean like a look and feel that makes me present in the moment. That makes me feel like I'm there. That makes the time and the setting of the film come to life for me.
Yeah.
There were 3 scenes that for me stood out. The opening scene with the grandmother in the kitchen peeling the orange, and like when you're able to see her navigate the environment, and then we see Olivia kind of enter the scene to assist her, and it's all like one long continuous shot, right? Just as like you're there in the moment, and maybe you're in a chair and you're just observing everything that's going on. So those long continuous shots with like a still mounted camera for me were like a theme throughout this film. That to me just added to like the authenticity of it. We're not doing anything dynamic here. We're telling someone's story.
Yeah.
There was one other scene where it's like I think this is when we first meet Alex, and he's like taking the long walk through the meat factory.
Yeah.
And you just have and in a scene like this, you just have the cameraman with a single camera who's like, you know, being walked through and guided through the meat factory. It's just one long continuous shot where he's having a conversation with his uncle, who's I guess the factory manager, and you get great audio. You get a good shot of the environment that he's going to be working in. Kind of like a place where like, I don't want to fucking work there.
Yeah.
But it gives you a texture and it gives you a feel of like the situation he's in, the situation and how he maybe has gotten himself there, as well as like the relationship dynamic between his family members. Obviously this guy is his uncle, but I'm not treating you like you're my nephew because, you know, you're kind of a fuck up. So you get all of that, and it's just shot in a really beautiful way.
Yeah.
The last scene, I thought this was stunning how they did this. Do you remember the scene when Olivia was at the train station?
Yeah.
And she was waiting for the train, and she was like staring kind of like down the track, even as the train was passing her. And the camera's really far out, and then it just pans into her really, really slowly, really beautifully. You get a lot of things from that. You get setting, you get like a texture of like where she is in her environment. You get emotion from her, right? Like she's obviously thinking in this scene. Like she's feeling a lot of things. There's no words. She's not saying anything, but she's feeling a lot. And like you just kind of get great visuals as well. Like that, to me, that was one of the most beautiful shot in the film. So in terms of cinematography, nothing dynamic, a lot of appropriate shots.
Yeah, and I think that I kind of have to like echo a lot of those statements. Is that, you know, a lot of the shots that I really loved in the film, there wasn't anything extraordinary about them. It was actually just, I think it was the most responsible thing you can do with a film like this, which is remove yourself from it as far as like trying to do too much with it, right? That you say more by saying less, right? That or you do more by doing less. And that was one of the things that I kept noticing throughout the film. Just like you notice the opening shot of, you know, the grandmother, Olga, who, you know, you kind of stay with her for a second, but then the follow-up shots of that where Alex is coming back into the fold and you see him meeting the family, and instead of doing like a whole bunch of like over the shoulder shots of him talking to the family members, all you really get is just one static shot or stationary shot of Alex coming in, the rest of the family coming in, them talking to him, and then you know what I mean, like, and so from that standpoint, I loved a lot of the still sort of fixed shots that you get in the film. The one thing that I can say as a critique of the film, though, some of the editing I think to me was a little bit choppy. We tended to jump from scene to scene without there being much establishment for like where we just came from and where we're going to. I think a lot of some of the cuts were just like jarring of like, okay, we go from Alex being in like the house to him being at work, and then basically to him on his way back to the house. And it was just like, oh, like, well, we could have figured out how to do that some other way. Like we didn't have to like jump from one thing to the other. I didn't have to know that he was at work. I don't know. Maybe he's I don't know, do something else with them other than that. But that's like my one critique of the film. I don't really have many other, if any, critiques of the film past that. But that is one thing I can say is that some of the editing for it I thought was a little spotty at times, as far as like exactly knowing exactly where we are and spending enough time there to justify us transitioning to that point. But yeah, that's all I can say as far as the cinematography / editing. And I would give the editor a shout out, but I couldn't find who the editor was for the film. But lastly, what do we think of the soundtrack? What did you think of the sound of the film?
All right, so this is where I'm going to fall flat.
Okay.
I did not capture most of the soundtrack from this film.
Yeah.
I guess what I'd have to say is it was appropriate. Like at no point in time did I feel like the music took me out of the movie. Mm-hmm. At no point in time did I feel like the soundtrack stood above the movie in any way. But also at no point in time did I feel like the soundtrack amplified the film in any way. Mm-hmm. I felt like, again, and I'm going to use your word here, it was responsible. It added to the scenes, in a very like light way throughout the film, and it was consistent. So responsible and consistent is maybe the words I would use, but I don't remember it. And I also want to give a disclaimer here. And this is maybe where I've done this film discredit, is as I was watching this movie, maybe like 20 or 30 minutes into this movie is when I first got the news about Chadwick Boseman's passing, right?
So it's like, get your full.
I'm watching this movie and I'm trying to, do the film, the service of paying attention to it, but you can't help but to follow the news, right?
Life,
so like there are certain things that there are certain conversations that I missed. There are certain cinematography elements that I've missed. The soundtrack for me was a huge miss because, again, I had background thoughts in my head. So I wish I had more to say about the soundtrack, but there's obviously a huge distraction there for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't also say too much about the soundtrack, but what I can say is that from the amount of the soundtrack that I kind of really sort of like paid attention to, what I can say about it is that it was almost like a religious soundtrack. There was a lot of like atmospheric, kind of like gospel sounding. Not gospel, maybe that's not the word I want to use, but I got the feeling of like religion when I heard a lot of the score that was laid down for the film, I thought the song that Olivia or that I guess Trixie, the song that Trixie is basically reminding Olivia of. That Olivia used to sing to Trixie when they were kids. Church. Yeah. That was beautiful, addition to it. And what I also loved, and it doesn't necessarily fit into the actual soundtrack, but it's a sound thing nonetheless, is a lot of their voiceover work is that they would have somebody talking and then they would just have other scenes just going on as the person was talking, which helped sort of like add like layers and textures to the story that was, I don't know, it was just like spot on, it was just like, oh shit. Like it made you feel something different than if they would have just had the person talking and you just see the conversation going back and forth. It just like, it took you through what the people were thinking. So for instance, the scene that you're talking about that, for the cinematography where you see that the shot of Olivia on the train tracks, or the train station rather, or
train station, the platform.
I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It was beautiful because there was this voiceover of, I think, and I can't remember exactly. Maybe I'm wrong with this, and obviously everybody's free to call me out on it. But I think it was a moment where she was basically, I think she was trying to talk to Alex about like. I think it's right before they go on their trip, and she's talking to him about like, her feelings of like ice and all that other stuff, and what she thinks of their relationship. I think that's what it was. I might be wrong about that, but it was like a moment. It was like kind of it was ramping up to the climax of the film, and it was just really sort of like beautifully done. And I think that maybe one of the reasons why you didn't necessarily hear the soundtrack all that much is because I don't think they actually had much music in the actual film, that they actually for the most part let the voices sort of dominate the atmosphere in the movie. And so that I give them credit for that, you know, you have to kind of know when to hold them, know when to fold them, you know, as they say. And that was one, I think, the key elements. Let's wrap this up by talking about kind of like our last impressions of the film.
This is I'm going to say it because I feel like it's something that needs to be said, right?
Sure.
When I mentioned Frank Ocean, right, and his music, and how despite being a stellar artist, there are people who don't feel comfortable or won't listen to his music because he's a man who identifies as bisexual, homosexual. There's going to be a large group of people or audience of people who may not want to go see this film because of the subjects that it addresses.
Yeah.
For some people, it might be the experience of an immigrant. Like, I'm not, I don't care about that film. For some people, it may be the experience of a transgender woman, right, who are turned off by that element of the film. Again, for those people, if you're one of those people, you're listening to this podcast right now, you've got something that you need to address within yourself. That disappoints me because this is such a great movie.
Yeah.
And if you can divorce yourself from your preconceived notions about people or your political standpoint or your religious beliefs and just appreciate a good film, if you can just appreciate a good film, this is a movie for you, and I highly recommend you watch it. If you're unable to do that, that's unfortunate for you. You're missing out on a great body of work here. But this is a movie that I discovered, and I read a little bit about it. I had no expectations for it. This movie exceeded my expectations. I'd recommend this to anyone. It's just a really good body of work.
Yeah, I think you speak to something that's actually speaks to the heart, I think, of not just this movie, but movies, right? Like, movies are supposed to allow us to walk in somebody else's shoes, right? For 2 hours, for an hour and a half, whatever it is, right? And if you find yourself at any point thinking, I can't do this, I can't walk through this person's shoes, right? Okay, that's on you. Like, if you can't just, if you can go watch whatever fucking mindless Michael Bay movie that's out there, 18th Transformer, and be like, I like this,
you could be like, well, Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Say, what? You can't watch this film?
Yeah. I know something like this might be harder to grapple with too, because there's nothing, you keep waiting for this ominous moment to happen in this movie, and it just never comes. Right. So, it's a little more cerebral than that. It's a little more like, okay, you just are basically walking with somebody in their shoes, which can be sometimes boring for people even at times to go through. But if you just look just a little bit underneath that surface level of whatever you might find in a movie, this type of movie, even if it's not this nuanced, because I find this is a really nuanced movie, but even if it's not as nuanced as this, it's just incredible sometimes to just watch and just take a journey with somebody, go through somebody else's life and see what it's like. And it just leaves you with this feeling especially if you have any sort of connection to that, or if you have your own preconceived notions. I would say this is a movie, especially if you have a preconceived notion of, whether it's about somebody being transgender or, immigrants or whatever the case is. If you have any sort of preconceived notion, this is the perfect movie for you to watch, because it shows you this incredible, this incredible story of just a person. Forget whatever you want to throw on top of it as far as whatever your baggage is, but you're just seeing somebody's journey, which is just fantastic to watch. And they do it in this really delicate way that's just honest and it's just real. The one other thing I can say about the movie, and this might just step on everything that we were just saying, but I actually liked how they just entered into the movie, and I forgot to say this, about the plot, how they entered in real world dialogue. They had Trump's
that was huge,
and it wasn't overdone. It wasn't oh my god, okay, we're seeing this about Trump, okay, this is I hate Trump thing. It wasn't at all. It was actually speaking specifically to Olivia's circumstance, and it was just you feel her fear when she's listening to these words, and and it's just done in this perfect way that's not overbearing. It's not we hate Trump. It's just it was just born in the fear of her life, you know?
And so I read an interview with her where she originally wrote this film, right? And then she, there were certain points where like she rewrote certain parts of the film with the background of like the Trump administration, and you know the trans community having been like a huge speaking point during that moment in time, in which she was rewriting certain parts of this film. I mean, and it's still where we are today. It's still a big topic of conversation. We were talking about this before we started recording. You know, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Trans Lives Matter movement is a big speaking point right now. There are a lot of things that have more recently happened within the trans community that are very, very, like, as we hear today, very like current speaking points. I don't know if you have like, if this movie made you feel, if you couldn't watch Brokeback Mountain because it was about two gay guys, you know, maybe you couldn't watch it then, but I challenge you now to just, I want to say grow up a little bit, but that sounds harsh. Open yourself up to,
I think you're fine.
That's true. You know, those people who I tell you to grow up, you're going to feel a way about that. Open yourself up to new experiences, new journeys, and I think this might be good. This might be a good one of them.
It's not even that tough. Like it's just a really dope movie. A good fucking movie. Go watch
That's
it.
really all it is. But this is one of those movies. If you're looking for something good to watch, right? If you're willing to dedicate an hour and 34 minutes of your time to a really good movie, this could be one of them.
Yeah. I think we just leave it at that, man. So we press play on the film. I believe it's Lingua Franca.
That's how I say it.
There you go. You just said it real fast. That's all. So we press play on the
restaurant
film
last week, so I feel like I could. I got it down.
We were doing so well.
I threw everything.
We were doing so well.
And this isn't even a Mexican movie. She's Filipino. Listen, I'm culturally diverse.
All right, we press play on the movie. We might edit that part out. But we hope you do too. And if you do, just let us know in the comment section below. Let us know what you feel about it, what you thought about the movie. I'm not even gonna hide the fact that I absolutely love this movie. I thought it was fantastic from beginning to end. Can't wait to hear what everybody else thinks.